In this lesson, we're exploring polarity and how to work with what seem like opposites or seem like choices that are mutually exclusive, and how we can transcend that and break open new possibilities. In our current world, the four forces are often seen as opposites, or that we have to choose between one or the other. This is how strategies are often created. For example, there's the common me versus you. I can either get what I want or you can get what you want. Or the idea of I can either be my self-expression or belong and be part of connection. Another common one, I can make money or I can be of service, purpose. So growth versus purpose. In the last lesson, we explored a list of those common polarities, and there's 6 combinations in all that you can work with within the four forces framework. As we bring the four forces together, we need to learn how to pat our head and rub our tummy at the same time. There are stages that we can go through as we learn how to work with polarities and start to put the forces together. These are also indicators in where you are and how you might want to stop and say, okay, I'm in black and white right now. How can I work with this? So the first is we have this singular focus. The world is black. Black is true. Black is safe. Or the idea of I want black. Everything that I do, if I could only get black, then everything would be okay. Throughout this lesson, we're going to be using the example of a relationship. So for example, I am alone. If I only had a relationship, I would be happy. I have to find a relationship. The idea is the dominance here of connection, the single focus of connection. However, often once we get something, we end up then flipping. I never want black again. White will protect me. The world is not black. It must therefore be white. The idea too that black gets boring after a while. Now we want something different, or black didn't work. White will definitely work. If I do it this different way, I'm going to flip over to the opposite. And the idea too that we get fixated on something thinking it's going to give us what we want, but then we feel like, no, that actually just caused problems or it didn't work, so I'm going to try a completely opposite strategy. In the relationship example, we have connection, we've gotten what we want or some version of it, but now we feel ourselves starting to rebel against it. This is why I didn't want a relationship, or we get triggered, something happens, and we feel like, oh, now I don't have any freedom. And there starts to become this flip reaction of, I'll be happier alone, let me go back to just being in expression. So we start in this idea of I want black, we then flip to white, but then we find, oh, white has its own set of problems. White didn't work either, let me go back to black. And we can find ourselves in this flip-flop. Black gets me in trouble, I'll be white, but white is boring, so I go black, back to black, and then we end up just flipping faster back and forth. And there's this idea of I feel torn. Part of me wants black, part of me wants white, I'm confused, sometimes the world's black, sometimes it's white. Or then we'll even start with an idea where it's like, well, I'm going to be this part of myself, because this can also be parts of ourselves, right? Parts of me want to be close, parts of me want to be separate. And so we end up sort of even creating different groups of friends where we can be these different parts of ourselves or get different things, but there's still the feeling of flip-flopping between the forces. In our relationship example, we start with the idea of wanting connection. We want a relationship, but then too much connection and we end up flipping, or things go badly and we flip back into expression. I'm going to be alone. But then we have the same issue there. Alone is lonely. And well, maybe if I found a different person, I'll try it again. Nope, that didn't work. And we end up repeating. And we end up in this sort of flip-flopping, trying to resolve it. And that brings us to the fourth stage or fourth version of working with polarity, where we end up in this gray middle. While flip-flopping isn't working, I won't be too black or too white. I'll just be gray and I'll compromise. I'll stay in this middle. I'll try to find the balance between these 2 points. And one of the big things here is I'm going to use rules and boundaries to help me get what I want. I'm going to define it and try to stay in this in-between area. Or we can also just go into a place of frustration, exhaustion, and just say, I give up, I'm not even going to try anymore. In our relationship example, this can look like I do want a relationship, but I don't want it to be too smothering. I don't want too much connection, because I also want expression. So I'll set up a bunch of rules that's using the purpose force, such as we're only going to sleep together 3 nights a week, or I'll be in a relationship, but I won't get too close. And we end up setting up behaviors where we really have to exert our independence. I'm going to protect my independence. So we're trying to find a way to stay in this middle ground where we're not too much of one or the other. In the end, we actually find, though, that that's limiting. That still doesn't really get us what we want. And as we move to this fifth stage of the working with polarities, we start to embrace this idea of a spectrum. I don't have to be exactly in the middle, and I don't have to be black and white. I can move between them. I have a range. And the idea starts to happen that they're not mutually exclusive. I can be white sometimes and black other times, but there's not the sense of flip-flopping. It's more of this idea of I can stretch and move along the spectrum and feel this full range of the possibilities between black and white. How this can look in a relationship is it's okay to have independence sometimes, expression, and closeness other times. When I feel smothered, I'm able to express my need for space and I can negotiate with my partner. Instead of having fixed rules, we can start to use purpose as agreements and being able to talk and negotiate together. And there's this idea of moving between the degrees of togetherness and separateness and more of a sense of fluidity there, and being able to have the skills to communicate needs to each other and address them. This is the commonplace that I would say is a healthy relationship. You're feeling pretty good there, but then there's this sense of like, there's still something more. It's good, and yet there's this feeling that there's just more there. And this is where we start to have this idea that the four forces coming together can break us open into a whole new set of possibilities and a whole new option beyond just black, white, and gray. How I came about this was I was meditating one day and I was asking what's next in my growth? Where's my limitation? I was sitting and looking for guidance. And what I saw was this spectrum in front of me. On one end, in this case, was showing me this idea of embodiment. And on one side was this idea of the ecstatic, transcending the body. In my particular case and on my particular journey, using being in those ecstatic states, sexuality being about transcendence, transcending the body, going into meditation, spirituality, that was the place I had been focusing. And what I saw was on the other end was this idea of the physical pleasure of being human, of being fully in my body. And I saw this image that I tended to keep myself more in the ecstatic and wasn't fully embracing the full spectrum. However, what I also saw was to the extent that I blocked physical raw pleasure, that physical body, my humanness, I also actually blocked my ability to go any further in the ecstatic. And this was why I was feeling this sense of kind of being stuck, even though I had been on this journey and having all these amazing experiences. I had felt like I had gotten into a place where, well, I know this territory, and where is there more? What's next? As I was meditating, I saw this image of the two ends of the spectrum coming together, and the image was of a snake biting its own tail, that the two extremes coming together at the same time, that intersection point of the snake biting its tail, the two opposites coming together, was where I needed to go. This idea of being fully in the ecstatic, fully transcending the body at the same time as being fully in the body, fully in the human pleasure and the physical pleasure of being in this reality. And when I did that, there was this shift that happened in me. And as I explored this, I had a 6-month experiment where I was really playing with how do I do these two as deeply as possible. And there was this very palpable shift. And the analogy is going from this black and white and grayscale into technicolor. If I can be as black and white at the same time, it's not just deeper gray. We actually break open into this idea of there's a whole rich range of unlimited color, of which black, white, and gray are still part of it. This also is part of the idea of purpose, creating this third thing. It allows for something more. In an additional lesson, we'll briefly even be touching into the idea of the cutting edge of quantum physics and how this idea of superposition, of being two things in two states at the same time, is at the heart of a lot of the growth in technology, quantum computing, and the cutting edge of science as well. Let's take a look at our example of relationships from this Technicolor shift. When you're fully in the Technicolor version, then what we see is the four forces start to come together. It's not just expression and connection or black and white. We start to open it up to all sorts of other possibilities. And while this is a general idea of what it could look like and feel like, the idea is that when you come together, you and your partner get to create whatever it is that you want to create in your relationship. So this idea of you being fully and deeply yourself at the same time that you're also broken open in deep connection with your partner and also with life. The idea that you are able to hold the third thing of relationship that allows you and your partner to actually create something greater than you can alone, that's bringing in purpose. That you have a clear intention and understand that your relationship is a living organism and that you're both contributing to it, but that it also serves you. That's bringing growth and purpose together. And we also allow in this kind of relationship the idea of what wants to happen. We are impacted and changed by each other. We're changed by the relationship. We let the relationship evolve us. And also our capacity expands, that we are constantly exploring new levels of connection, expression, purpose, and growth, both individually and in the relationship. And we're able to navigate not only the practical together in flow states and with more collaboration, but we're also able to access ecstatic states together, flow states of union and breaking open in new ways together in those ecstatic, non-ordinary states of consciousness. Transcending polarity creates a whole new kind of reality. It is a paradigm shift. I know that word gets used a lot, but it really opens up a whole new set of options that just aren't there when you're in that black and white perspective. Working with patterns and strategies in your life start to reveal these polarities that show up between the forces. And working with these polarities allows you to break open into even more possibility and a completely new way of getting your needs met and embracing the four forces in your life.